the timeline matters more than people think, because once you start placing Yu Long and Yang Mia inside the actual 2025 to 2026 release cycle instead of looking at them in isolation, a completely different picture starts to form, one that fans have only recently begun to piece together through scattered posts, reposted release lists, and fragmented platform data that doesn't tell you everything directly but reveals patterns if you follow it long enough. Early 2026 wasn't just busy, it was overloaded. Multiple vertical dramas featuring the pair dropped within extremely tight windows, including titles like Lu, Your Greedy Little Wife is Now Online, One Night in Midsummer, and Never Say It's Too Late to Fall in Love, all reportedly airing around February 5, 2026. That clustering wasn't treated as normal by viewers. It triggered a wave of discussion, because instead of spacing releases, their projects appeared almost stacked, creating a sense that they were suddenly everywhere at once. At the same time, separate scheduling chatter, less formal, but still widely circulated, claimed that the duo was already lined up for a 33rd joint drama project, which pushed the conversation into a completely different territory. It stopped being about individual releases and became about scale. Fans weren't asking "Is this drama good?" anymore, they were asking "How is this output even possible?" That question opened the door to one of the most intense argument clusters currently happening in discussion spaces. One side built a timeline-based argument, mapping out releases and estimating production overlap. Their conclusion was that many of these projects must be shot in extremely compressed schedules, sometimes overlapping, which would explain why performance styles remain consistent across different dramas. The logic here is straightforward: if actors are moving rapidly between similar productions, there's less room for reinvention, more reliance on established rhythm. The opposing side rejected that interpretation and reframed the same data differently. Instead of seeing repetition as a limitation, they argued it's a form of optimization. If a specific emotional delivery style works, if it retains viewers, triggers replays, generates comments, then changing it too much would actually be counterproductive in a system driven by engagement metrics rather than artistic novelty. And this is where the comparison with mainstream productions becomes critical again. Look at something like Shine on Me, which didn't just perform well, it reached platform heat index records, topped trending charts, and surpassed 1 billion views across platforms. That kind of success is built on a completely different model: long-form storytelling, sustained narrative arcs, and synchronized audience attention across weeks. But vertical drama operates differently. It doesn't aim to dominate attention, it aims to recapture it repeatedly. And that difference explains why Yu Long and Yang Mia can release multiple projects in rapid succession without necessarily cannibalizing their own audience. In fact, the opposite seems to happen. Each new release reinforces recognition, making previous content more likely to resurface through algorithmic association. Fans started calling this a stacking effect. Not official terminology, but a useful one. Here's how they describe it. You watch one clip, the system learns your preference, you get another clip from a different drama with the same actors, recognition reduces friction, you engage faster, the system reinforces the loop. Over time, separate projects stop feeling separate. They become one continuous stream. That's why viewers often struggle to remember which scene belongs to which drama. It's not just memory, it's structure. The content is designed, distributed, and consumed in a way that blurs boundaries between individual works. And this leads directly into one of the most fascinating scene-level debates currently happening. There's a specific confrontation scene from one of their February releases, frequently clipped, reposted, and dissected, where Yu Long delivers a line with sharp emotional escalation, while Yang Mia responds with a noticeably delayed reaction, almost as if she's processing rather than reacting in real time. The argument around this scene split almost perfectly into two camps. Camp 1, this is a flaw. The delay breaks rhythm, reduces impact, and creates a disconnect between characters. Camp 2, this is the point. The delay creates tension, forces the viewer to wait, and makes the moment feel less scripted. But then a third perspective entered, and it changed the tone of the entire discussion. Some users pointed out that this exact clip, specifically because of that delay, was being reposted far more than cleaner, more traditionally correct scenes. It generated more comments, more rewatches, more debate. So the question shifted again. Not is this good acting, but is this effective content? And once that question is introduced, everything changes. Because now you have to consider platform behavior. Short-form platforms don't reward perfection, they reward interaction. A perfectly executed scene might be satisfying, but it's rarely discussed. A slightly off scene, however, becomes a puzzle. Viewers replay it, argue about it, share it with captions like "Why does this feel weird?" or "Is this intentional?" That friction becomes fuel. And when you compare this with other rising CP pairings, especially those entering the market in 2025 to 2026, the difference becomes even clearer. Some newer pairings rely on heightened emotional delivery, exaggerated reactions, and visually striking moments designed for instant impact. These clips often perform well immediately, generating high initial engagement. But they don't always sustain discussion. Long and Mye operate differently. Their scenes often don't resolve cleanly enough for viewers to move on quickly. So instead of a spike, they create a loop. And that loop becomes visible not just in engagement, but in perception. Fans begin to feel like they're constantly encountering the same actors, even when they're technically watching different content. That perception feeds back into discussion, reinforcing the idea that the pair is dominating the space, even if their actual output is comparable to others. Meanwhile, the broader industry continues moving in parallel. While vertical dramas flood short-form platforms, larger productions like Generation to Generation and Veil of Shadows continue to follow traditional release structures, with scheduled episodes, longer runtimes, and narrative continuity driving engagement. These two systems coexist, but they don't operate by the same rules. One builds immersion. The other builds repetition. And Long and Mye sit directly inside the second system, where success isn't measured by how deeply you pull viewers into a story, but by how often you bring them back to fragments of it. So now the discussion has reached a point where it's no longer about individual performances or even individual projects. It's about alignment. Alignment between acting style, scene construction, release frequency, and platform mechanics. And once you see that alignment, it becomes difficult to unsee. Because every clip, every pause, every slightly delayed reaction starts to look less like a random choice and more like part of a larger pattern, whether intentional or not. So here's the real question to leave you with, and it's one that fans themselves haven't been able to answer definitively. Are Long and Mye shaping the system by understanding what works within it? Or are they simply the most visible result of a system that is already selecting for exactly this kind of performance? Think about that the next time you scroll and notice not just what you're watching, but what makes you stop, what makes you replay, and what makes you stay longer than you expected. Because that's where the real story is happening. I'll see you in the next one.